350,000 people just moved one court filing away from losing the legal right to work in this country. That is the top story today, and it is not the only one. A federal judge acknowledged the Supreme Court ruling that clears the path for President Donald Trump to end temporary protected status for Haiti. Trump went after Michigan Senate nominee Abdul El-Sayed in Las Vegas in language you rarely hear from a sitting president. A Senate committee sets a vote to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress 1 week after he pleaded the Fifth. And in Spokane, more than 846 structures are gone. We also have a Republican congressman refusing to quit under pressure, a revoked ambassador's visa, a Texas gun ruling, and a surprise exit that has Republicans scrambling. 8 stories the whole day in one place. Stay to the end. The last 3 are the ones nobody is talking about yet, and they hit your wallet. 350,000 work permits. That is the scale of what happened in a courtroom today. A federal judge acknowledged a Supreme Court ruling that clears the path for President Donald Trump to end temporary protected status for Haiti. Fox News reports that roughly 350,000 Haitians in the United States now face the loss of their work authorization in the wake of that decision. Temporary protected status is the designation that lets people from countries in crisis stay and work legally while their home country is judged too dangerous to return to. Take the status away, and the legal right to hold a job goes with it. Note what this ruling was and was not. The judge did not reopen the argument. The judge acknowledged that the Supreme Court had already settled the question, which is how a case that looked like a roadblock turned into what the White House is calling a major immigration victory. Here is what it means on the ground. Every employer with workers on that status is looking at paperwork that stops being valid. On Fox's America Reports, former acting ICE Director Jonathan Fahey discussed how the agency is reportedly planning to deport Haitian migrants as the protected status expires. What is next is timing, when permits lapse, and whether any legal path remains. Reported by Fox News. A sitting president stood on a stage in Las Vegas and said a Senate nominee is, quote, full of expletive, and called him a man of hate. That was President Donald Trump on Wednesday, at a campaign-style event, going after Abdul El-Sayed, the Michigan Democratic Senate nominee. The Hill reports Trump told the crowd, quote, the polls were wrong again last night when they said it would be a landslide victory for a hater of Jews and a hater of Israel. That is Trump's characterization, not a finding of fact, and the Hill's report does not carry a response from El-Sayed. The context matters. The event was built around touting the administration's agenda, and Trump used it to relitigate a primary result that polling had called for a landslide, and that came in tighter than expected. The Associated Press describes El-Sayed's rise as a journey from political oblivion to a progressive breakthrough in the Michigan Senate race. Why should you care? Michigan is one of the seats that decides who controls the Senate, and whoever controls the Senate controls taxes, spending, and confirmations. A presidential attack this personal usually does 2 things. It nationalizes the race and it moves money. Watch the fundraising numbers next. Reported by The Hill. One of the most recognizable public health officials in American history is one committee vote away from being held in contempt of Congress. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee is set to vote Thursday on a resolution to hold former top health official Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt, The Hill reports. It comes 1 week after Fauci pleaded the Fifth Amendment and refused to answer the committee's questions at a hearing. Be precise here. Invoking the Fifth is a constitutional right. It is not an admission of anything, and courts have said repeatedly that it cannot be treated as one. But The Hill notes the move raises 2 open questions. How much broader Republican support the resolution actually has inside the committee, and what legal risk Fauci is exposed to if it advances. Fox News reports separately that Fauci's government-issued iPhone has been turned over to Senate investigators as the vote looms, and that he has been subpoenaed as part of a probe into allegations he profited off federal guidance. Those are allegations, they are unproven. Why it matters to you. This is the template for how Congress pursues former officials in both directions for years to come. What is next is the Thursday vote itself, and whether it goes to the full Senate. Reported by The Hill. More than 846 structures destroyed. That is the number out of Spokane reported by KXLY, and it is the number that tells you how bad this fire season has turned in eastern Washington. Sit with that word for a second, structures. In fire reporting, a structure is not just a house. It is a house, a garage, a barn, a shop, a shed, a mobile home, an outbuilding. That is why the number climbs so quickly in the first days, and why it takes longer to sort out how many of those were somebody's only home. For families in the burn area, the sequence is brutal and predictable. Evacuation first, then the wait, then a damage assessment published street by street, and you find out from a list whether you still have a house. After that comes the insurance fight, the contractor shortage, and the question of where you live for the next year while you rebuild. Here is the money piece. Losses at this scale ripple outward into premiums and coverage availability for everyone in the region, not only the people who lost a building. What is next? Containment numbers and the official damage assessment. Counts like this one are preliminary and can move. Reported by KXLY. A Republican congressman is being told by people in his own party to walk away from his own re-election campaign. He is saying no. The Associated Press reports that GOP Representative Max Miller is resisting pressure to drop his re-election bid as anxiety grows inside the party over abuse claims. Two things need to be said clearly. Those claims are allegations, they have not been proven, and the AP frames the story around party anxiety and the pressure campaign rather than any legal finding, and Miller's answer to that pressure so far has been to stay in the race. Understand what is really happening here. A party does not push a sitting incumbent toward the exit because of one bad news cycle. It does it when the internal math says a seat that should be safe is turning into a seat that has to be defended with money. Money that then cannot be spent somewhere else. Every dollar spent shoring up an incumbent under a cloud is a dollar not spent flipping a district. That is the calculation driving the anxiety. What is next? Whether the pressure becomes public and named, whether a primary challenger emerges, and whether Miller holds the line he has drawn. Reported by the Associated Press. The United States just revoked the visa of another country's ambassador to Washington. That is not a routine diplomatic slap. The Hill reports the State Department on Tuesday revoked the visa of Maria Luisa Ribeiro Viotti, the Brazilian ambassador to the United States. Amid tensions between the two governments, the office of Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said in a statement that it repudiates the decision. Viotti is Lula's ambassador in Washington, which is the entire point of the move. This targets the person whose job is to be the channel between the two capitals. Why does that reach your life? Brazil is one of the largest economies in the Western Hemisphere and a major agricultural exporter. When the diplomatic channel between two governments narrows, the disputes that would normally get quietly resolved by an ambassador's phone call instead escalate into tariffs, export restrictions, and retaliation. Those show up in commodity prices, in coffee, in beef, in orange juice, and in the cost of doing business for American companies operating there. What is next? Whether Brasilia responds in kind against an American diplomat, and whether either side offers a path back. Escalation in diplomacy is usually reciprocal. Reported by The Hill. A judge in Texas just told the government it cannot enforce a gun law. The Associated Press reports that a Texas judge ruled a law regulating firearm suppressors, and certain guns cannot be enforced. That is the ruling in a sentence, and the sentence carries more weight than its length suggests. A suppressor, the device commonly and inaccurately called a silencer, has sat in one of the most heavily regulated categories in American firearms law for decades. Buying one has meant paperwork, a tax, a wait, and a registry. A ruling that a law regulating them cannot be enforced goes straight at that structure. Here is why this lands beyond Texas. Rulings like this rarely stop where they start. They get appealed, they get cited by lawyers in other states, and they set up the kind of split between courts that eventually forces a higher court to answer the question for the whole country. If you own firearms, this is about what you can legally buy and what paperwork you owe. If you do not, it is about who gets to decide. A legislature or a judge. What is next? The appeal and how far the ruling's reach actually extends. Reported by the Associated Press. Our last story is the one that will matter most in 6 months, and almost nobody covered it today. Axios reports that Chuck Edwards' abrupt exit has left Republicans scrambling. That is the headline, and that is the situation. An unexpected departure, and a party that did not have a plan ready for it. Pay attention to the word abrupt. In politics, planned retirements get announced early, on purpose, so the party has time to line up a successor, clear the primary field, and start raising money before anyone else does. Abrupt means none of that happened. It means a candidate recruitment scramble, a primary that is suddenly wide open, and a seat that has to be defended with resources nobody budgeted for. Put it next to the Max Miller story we just covered, and you see the actual pattern of the day. A party managing two personnel problems at once in the middle of a cycle, with a Senate map that already has Michigan on it. Every scramble like this one costs money that was earmarked for offense. What is next? Who files, how fast leadership settles on a favorite, and whether the seat stays off the competitive list. Reported by Axios. That was the whole day in one place. 350,000 work permits on the line in the Haiti ruling, a president calling a Senate nominee full of it in Las Vegas, a contempt vote landing on Dr. Anthony Fauci, and more than 846 structures gone in Spokane. A fresh collection drops tomorrow, same time, same format. Here's my question for you. Which of these 8 actually changes your life first, the immigration ruling or the wildfire numbers? Tell me below. If this saved you an hour of scrolling, hit like and subscribe.